Well, I am sitting here with this fairly large stack of books and curriculum and learning resources that our family is going to be using this 25-26 homeschool year. If you're new here, hi, my name is Jess from the blog SilenceSage.com. I'm a former teacher, mom of 5 boys that this year are 12th, 10th, 9th, 7th, and 3rd grade. And these are the books that we'll be using for our family subjects, our family learning time. Because yes, even though I have a wide range of ages in my house, we still do a lot of family style learning. Family style learning has always been really core, really central to how we do our homeschool, and it hasn't changed. Well, it has changed, but that core central part of learning as a family has not changed, even though some of my kids are older and some of my kids are still younger. So while overall it hasn't changed, it has changed a little of the details, because obviously my 12th grader is doing a lot of learning on his own, and he's learning things at a depth that my 3rd grader is not. So we do still a lot of family style learning, and I'll kind of talk you through how we do that as I go through some of these resources. But this is just some of our resources. And there's a couple things that you need to know about our family if you are not familiar with us, if you are just coming across my channel, just coming across this video. If you don't know kind of how we homeschool, it's important for you to know a few things just to kind of give you some context to how we do our learning. So family style learning, that is important. And that's a rooster if you heard that. In addition to our family style learning, we maybe obviously do a lot of literature-based learning. So we don't do a lot of that traditional curriculum that's like textbooks and like big box curriculum that looks very like workbook, worksheety. That's not really how we do it here. We do a lot of literature-based learning. We really love interest-based learning, even in the high school years. And like I said, we love to learn together as a family. We really value hands-on learning experiences. So books are kind of the center for our learning. We are a Christian family, so we do have faith-based learning, but not all of our resources are faith-based resources. And we really view curriculum as just one tool in our toolbox. So while some of our learning and some of our resources comes from maybe like traditional curriculum, it's not our go-to. It's not our backbone of our learning, and it's just one tool in our toolbox. The other thing is that I go into a school year with really open hands, knowing that we may or may not get to all of this, and there are some things that are going to be non-negotiable for us, especially for my high schoolers with like the high school credit that I am planning for them to get for their transcripts. I know that the resources that we're using, we may not stick with all of these. If it seems that our family wants to go in a different direction, we're going to go in a different direction, and I'm okay with that. As long as my kids get the things that they're required to get by our state laws and the things that they need for their future plans and, you know, to meet the graduation requirements that we have, it's fine with me if we shift and we change. In fact, I would rather have my kids interested in learning and shift away from my plan for the year than have them really disinterested and disengaged from our learning. So that's really important to me. It's also really important that you know that we like to integrate a lot of our learning together. So that means that if we're learning history, we're also integrating language arts within that. And that's really important to know, especially for the high school years, that as my kids are getting their language arts credit, it's not just coming from a language arts curriculum. It's coming from their science and their history and even their art in our case this year. Like there's a lot of things that are mixed together, because I don't think you can really separate all of learning into all of these tiny little boxes of subjects. Learning happens so naturally in all areas, and when we integrate it together and get more of a holistic education, to me that's really important and really has a more genuine feel to it and has a more like just a richer and deeper learning experience. In my experience as a homeschool mom, and really in my time in the classroom too, I noticed a lot of the same things. So those are just kind of like some disclaimers, some like background information if you're just coming across this channel or this video, that you kind of know like who we are and what we do. We also live in Wisconsin, and that's why we're just kind of getting into our school year in the next week or two because it's August in Wisconsin and it's beautiful outside, and we are just really enjoying the time that we have outside because come like December and February and March and April, it's still going to be freezing. So we're not worried about having enough time to be inside later. We're going to have that time later. We're still doing stuff as we start the school year, but we did not start early in August. We're not starting yet. We are still kind of like slowly easing into our school year. So that's kind of why this video is coming out a little later than most people would have put their videos together, because honestly, it was not the top of my radar for July to be ready for a homeschool year, because we're not even homeschooling yet. We're just getting started into the year. But that was a lot of intro information, but I think important, especially if you are new here. And now I'm going to tell you about some of the things we're going to be learning together as a family. Over the years, I've been a huge fan of Beautiful Feet books and their programs. We've done a lot of their history units, and this year we're going to be doing modern US and world history. So we're going to be diving into like World War I, World War II, Vietnam, all of those things. I believe this might start a little earlier than that. I think it starts more like Civil War, but we already did that last year just on our own without any kind of guide. But I feel more comfortable going into like World War II, Vietnam, all that stuff with some sort of guide like this. Now, we're not going to use this like follow it to the letter. It's just a guide for us. I like Beautiful Feet books. I like their studies, but I pretty much never follow anything to the letter, especially when it comes to like literature-based learning. But I love that their programs are literature-based. There is some faith elements into it, but it's not really prominent. If you are not a Christian family, you can kind of like skip over those things probably pretty easily. But it is just a great tool for us. So there are a lot of books within this, and we're going to pick and choose. Now, I had already chosen some books that we were going to use for the year and had ordered a bunch. And then I was like, oh, I should get the Beautiful Feet Books guide. And then I added a whole bunch more books to my cart and ended up with a lot more. So we have a lot of books that we'll be using. We're probably not going to use all of them. I don't have like a full extensive list. If you're using Beautiful Feet books, I recommend that you shop around for prices. So I ordered some of the books from their site. They recommend a bunch of these books from Albert Marin, and I could not find all of these books on other sites used. So there were some books that I bought from their website, and then there were some that I found used, like on Thrift Books or used on Amazon. So I do recommend, if you use Beautiful Feet books and you do a lot of literature-based learning, that you shop around and try to find a good deal. It's worth it to wait an extra like few weeks for a book that's going to cost like $10 less than if you had bought it new. But there were some of their books that I could not find other places. So just know that going into it, that you are going to have to get a bunch of books, but you don't have to get them all directly from the Beautiful Feet Books website. So since we're doing history as a family subject, that's what we always do. My third grader is not learning as in depth about world history as my older kids are, but we do a lot of journaling when it comes to learning our history. So that's how we're integrating our language arts. Obviously reading a lot of books. Some of these books we might do as read alouds. Some of these books my kids might read on their own, my older kids. And then I have some other books that were not really part of this study, like I said, that I'm going to bring in some more like picture books, the Guts and Glory series. The Guts and Glory series, my kids have found to be really fun. So this one we will probably do as a read aloud because it's a little bit more engaging for my younger kids, and even my older kids like it. It has some fun, like graphic-y pictures. It's just a little bit more engaging than, say, like this huge history of the 20th century. It's not going to engage my third grader as much as the Guts and Glory book is going to. But we'll also bring in a bunch of picture books, a bunch of books that are a little more engaging for my, 3rd, 7th, and even my 9th grader, in a way that maybe like my 12th grader is gonna get a lot more out of this than my 3rd grader. So this is how I do literature-based learning with my whole family, is that I have resources that hit kind of like every different level and different expectations for what they're going to learn from what we're doing. Because my 3rd grader, he's gonna come back to this later on in his learning. My 12th grader, this is our last year of homeschool, so I want him to have a solid foundation. We're going to be adding in just some geography and some missionary biographies that I don't really have any to show you, but the YWAM series of missionaries is a great one. I think as we kind of like get into different areas of history, I'm just going to kind of like pull these in, find the ones that seem like they fit, maybe fit the area we're talking about, the area of the world, or find a missionary that fits that area of the world. And I don't have a full plan for this yet, but it's just kind of like, I know that I want to pull in some geography and pull in some biographies and kind of like tie it into our faith with like missionaries. And the On Mission magazine from Gentle Classical Press is great for this. I need to look on her website and see like what are the ones that tie in to some of the areas of the world that we're going to be learning about in this like world history. So European countries, things like that. The ones that I have right now, Brazil, China, Netherlands, and Saudi Arabia, they're probably not really countries we're going to be talking about a whole lot in this history unit. So I'm going to get some other ones, but I'm not in a rush to get it. I know that we're going to be in this period of time for a while, so I will get it as I get it. Now, something I am super excited about doing with my kids this year is my new Stories of Home morning time guide. Now, this guide is great for family learning because it integrates a lot of different things. It integrates picture books and an artist study and trying some actual art and even a little bit of history. And there are activities for all ages. So there are book lists for you. There are some book discussion guides with different questions that you could use, totally optional. But this morning time guide is really centered around two things. It's centered around home and folk art. So it kind of combines this idea of home and celebrating home and being part of a family and the things that you would find there, and even like home's different parts of the world. Like there's a lot of different things about home that are going to be covered in this morning time guide. And then the folk art part is really cool because the folk artists that we're studying, they did a lot of painting about home from their perspective. So you can see in this guide that we've got, so there's like one main picture book that kind of centers the whole morning, the whole morning time. And if you've ever done like my paragraphs and picture books, this is kind of the same idea. It just takes it a little bit more and gives a lot more integrated subjects and integrated learning and gives it a little more depth than the paragraphs and picture books. But what this does, it also gives some very specific things for elementary. So this whole column is all like elementary activities. We've got read or watch, art study, word work, write or discuss, create or explore, and extend. And then this side is all middle and high school. So additional things to read, different things to study, different art projects to try, different aspects of these artists. And some of the artists we're going to be studying, we've got Maud Lewis, Grandma Moses, Clementine Hunter, and Horace Pippin. And these are all folk artists that did a lot of painting about home and from their perspective. Some of them had struggles due to race or disability. And it really kind of goes into this idea of being kind of a homegrown artist, because that's what folk artists were and still are. So we're going to kind of go into this idea of folk art. We're going to specifically talk about paintings, and we will get to study all of these great artists. And it's really cool because as I was creating this, this morning time guide, honestly, I started with Grandma Moses because she's the one that I'm familiar with. And you probably are familiar with her art too, even if you didn't really know. She is probably one of the most famous folk artists of her time, and folk artists, painters anyway. And I discovered a bunch of different folk artists that I was unfamiliar with, including Horace Pippin. And he actually has some significant ties to World War I because he actually went to war and he was injured and he came home. And so we have some really great resources that will be tying these things in together between our history studies and our morning time art studies. And I'm really excited for how that's going to go. And especially for my high schoolers that are not particularly artsy. I have one who's very, very artsy, doing a lot of art, and that's really a focus for him. And then I have one who is very not artsy. And so this is a great way to get art onto his high school transcript and to get him kind of like engaging in art in a different way without being really artsy. So there are some art tutorials that I recommend, like this book that's part of the study, and kind of give you a way to like try some art out, because the great thing is that folk art is not about being perfect. It's not about being properly trained. It's about just like experiencing it and doing art from your perspective. So I'm really excited about this. Now there are actually a couple other art studies that we are going to be pulling into our year. Now remember, these are things that we're going to be doing throughout the year. The Stories of Home Morning Time Guide is not going to take us through the full year. So we're also going to be doing the art appreciation study from Beautiful Feet Books. Now, they sent me this to review. They did not ask me to write or to do a video about it. They did not sponsor this post at all. They never required anything like that from me. They just asked me to, give a review of this program because it's brand new for them. And I am really excited about it. I think it's going to be really great. So this program goes actually through all kinds of different periods of art. It comes with a bunch of art. Here they are. It comes with some actual art prints that are really high quality. And I think this program is going to go really well with the Stories of Home, because Horace Pippin is actually one of the artists that are studied in here. And I think it'll just tie in really well because it'll have just like a brief overview of all the different periods of art, which I haven't really done with all of my kids. So I'm very excited about this one. It also comes with this, definitely just dropped something, this Book of Artists book, which honestly, this book is fantastic. And I think everybody should own it no matter what, even if you don't do the full study. It just kind of gives you like a little biography of all these different artists. Very, very good resource book to have on your shelf. We also have this book that will be pulling in 75 masterpieces every Christian should know. Fascinating stories behind great works of art, literature, music, and film. So it's not just art, but kind of like gives information about different works of art, not just like paintings, but things like cathedrals. Yeah, I'm very excited about this book too, and just kind of incorporating art in a lot of different ways into our homeschool this year and into our family learning time. Our family learning time always incorporates our Bible time, and usually I don't really have like a specific devotional we're doing, or, I might for a while and then I don't later. I don't know. I just kind of like go with the flow of how I feel like whether we need more structure or not. And the important thing to me is just that we're reading the Bible as a family and talking about it and praying and allowing my kids a time to ask questions and learn like our theology, all those things. So one of the things that we were doing toward the end of last year that we kind of paused over the summer is I was using this book, Wonderful, by Marty Machowski. I love all of these, all of the books that this author has. We have all of the books that he's written so far that I know of. And I think they're great resources. Now, this one goes through Psalms, and it just kind of has some like really engaging questions for each Psalm, ways to connect it to your own life. And what I'm having my kids do is we just have these little notebooks, blank little kind of like sketch notebooks that I probably got on Amazon, and we're using them as psalm journals. And so as we go through the psalms, they kind of like write down one verse from the psalm, one or two verses from the psalm, kind of like a copy work. And then they might draw a picture or write a prayer or write something. It's just a way for them to engage in the psalm and kind of like take that from their head and kind of like hide it in their heart, learn some of the key verses, that sort of thing. So that's something that we'll be bringing into our Bible time. I also have this book that I'm excited to go through with them, 10 questions every teen should ask and answer about Christianity. So this will be a great book for us to go through together as a family, especially since most of my kids are teens. I will have 4 teens by the end of this school year, which is crazy. And this book is actually a book that I listed as one of the possible resources you could use to extend learning within the Stories of Home Morning Time Guide. It's called Saving Leonardo by Nancy Pearcey, a call to resist the secular assault on mind, morals, and meaning. And so kind of is a really great look at culture and art and media and looking at it through a biblical lens instead of a secular lens, and kind of like how culture affects us as believers. So this is a book that I'm excited to kind of like tie in to the fact that we're doing art study, and just like as I'm kind of launching a child out into the world, just equipping them with the knowledge of how you can filter everything that comes at you through media and art and, you know, movies and social media and all these things through a biblical lens. So that's my goal with this book. We also have this book of poetry. I'd never heard of George Herbert, but he has a lot of faith-based poetry. I think most of his poetry is faith-based. I'm not 100% sure if that is correct, but a lot of it was written in Latin originally. He talks a lot about like communion and the cross. And so this is kind of like a combination of language arts and Bible that we will be bringing in some capacity. It's not like we're going to do like read all of his poetry, but I found it really fascinating and really interesting when I came across it. And so I just want to bring it into our morning time in some way. A lot of what we do, as I said, is integrated. So we'll be doing a lot of language arts integrated into these other things, but I always like to bring in some very specific writing or vocabulary, copy work, some very specific things that are helping my kids to learn specific skills that they might need, or just to kind of like bring that creative writing piece. And this has actually been really fun for us as a family. We do a lot of word of the day activities, and I've talked a lot about this. I think I talked about this in my morning work binder video, which was a couple years ago, I think. But it's kind of the same idea where we just pick a word of the day and then my kids do something with it. Maybe they draw a comic and they have to incorporate the word of the day. Or they make a character description where they describe a person who fits this word, and they use this word as part of the description, or they write a short story or whatever. It's usually something that I just come up with off the top of my head. I do have some of those word of the day activities built into the Stories of Home Morning Time Guide, but we'll just be continuing those throughout the year. We also will be bringing in StoryForge, which is creative writing for middle and high school. So these are just like little activities that are for your middle and high schoolers that give your kids something to write about and think creatively. They're creative writing activities though. So they're not like they could be narrative writing, but they're not about writing research papers. They are really about getting your kids in the creative writing space. Now, some of my kids are really naturally drawn in this way, and they're really like creative, and they're really good at writing. My oldest is, there's some times when I do things like this that I might not actually, I like him to participate, but I might not actually require it because he's actually taking a very intensive writing course that he's spending a lot of time doing creative writing, so I'm not worried about him doing it, but there's something fun about doing it all together as a family, even if he doesn't need it anymore. And I'm going to talk about that in a different video when I talk more specifically about what my high schoolers are doing individually. But this is really fun, and my third grader kind of like comes along with it, and he just does what he's able to do, even if it's not to the level that my middle and high schoolers are doing it. But this is probably geared more this year for me toward my 7th, 9th, and even my 10th grader. My 10th grader is also doing some other writing things, but my 7th and my 9th grader, this is something that we're working on, a lot of the creative writing things. We are also going to be doing some Shakespeare this year. I've actually said in previous videos that we were going to do Shakespeare, and we just kind of like dabbled in it. We never really did Shakespeare. So this is my year. I'm serious. We're gonna do it. But I do think it's important for kids to at least go through one Shakespeare work, like the actual Shakespeare. Now, I do have a lot of other resources like this, the Usborne Illustrated Stories from Shakespeare, which I think it's really good to have some more like annotated or what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say dumbed down, but that's not the correct term. Adapted versions of Shakespeare that are kind of written for, written for understanding. They're written for younger kids. I think it's a good way to start and to give you a good, like, hey, this is the idea of the story, so you can go into it not being overwhelmed by the language. I also really love this book, How to Teach Your Children Shakespeare by Ken Ludwig. It kind of goes through the different plays and gives more details and questions to ask and gives you as the parent just a better guide. And I also really love these No Fear Shakespeare books. So we'll be using, I think we're going to be doing A Midsummer Night's Dream. This is one of my favorites. I haven't 100% decided because I also really love Much Ado About Nothing. So I can't decide. If you have an opinion, let me know in the comments below because I can't decide. But No Fear Shakespeare gives you like 2 different versions of the play. It gives you the original text, and then it gives you kind of like the English translation that is more easy to understand, that is more easily understood. So we'll be using this one as a resource. I've gotten several of these at rummage sales. I know you can find them online. You can find them used online. Great resource to have if you are studying Shakespeare. Don't use this as like, don't let your kids just read like the, adapted version or just read the English translation. Like, make them read the real words because the way Shakespeare wrote was so different from how we write and speak today, and it's such beautiful language, and it's really important for kids to see it in the original language. And then we're gonna watch a movie because Shakespeare is meant to be watched as a play. If I can find a play somewhere locally or semi-locally, even if it's later after we've studied it, I really want to take my kids to a Shakespeare play. I know there's a lot of places around here that at least in the summer they'll do like Shakespeare in the Park. We're going to find a Shakespeare play and we're going to watch it. But we will definitely watch a movie to kind of like tie up after we finish this. Now, remember, if you're forgetting, these are things we're doing throughout the whole year. We're not doing all of these things all at one time. Okay. Another thing that we started last year that we're going to be continuing is this Kids' Brains on Screens. This is awesome. Now, I have teenagers, middle schoolers. Screens are a thing, right? Screens are a whole thing. I have a video that I did a couple years ago about how we handle screens as a family. And honestly, it has changed some because I now have a lot more teenagers. I have a 17, almost 18-year-old. The way we use screens, though, is very intentional. And it's really important to me that I'm raising kids who are not overly reliant on screens, who are not addicted to them at this age, who are not able to put their screens down. I want kids who can be able to like go somewhere without their phone. I want them to understand the brain chemistry of phone addiction. And that is really what this goes into. Now, this is designed as a curriculum. It even has like worksheets. We're using it like a book. It's not cheap. It's like the cost of a curriculum, but to me, it's worth it because it really goes into the science of why things like screens and video games and social media are so detrimental to our health and the effect that they have on our brains. So especially if you have kids that are really like logical and really need to know the why behind things, this is really important. I actually think it would be good to start with kids in middle school who are just getting to that age of like, they want a phone, they're asking for the phone, they want to be spending more time on screens, and really helping them to set healthy boundaries. So this resource, we started it last year, we're going through it just kind of slowly and taking it like a book. Like, we're not really doing any like the quizzes or the worksheets or things. We're just kind of reading through it and talking about it as a family. There are some other books also that I have had my older kids read that we're not reading this year because they have already read them. But if you're looking for a few more books on screens, I would recommend the book Reconnected by Carlos Whitaker. Even for you, that was really impactful for me on my screen boundaries. And 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You is one that I had my oldest read when he got his own phone. I said, here's your phone and here's the book to read alongside it. So there are probably some other things. I've had my kids listen to podcasts by Cal Newport about how screens are changing us and kind of affecting our brains. And so I think it's really important to have conversations with our kids about all of this. Now, I know this feels like a lot, and it probably is, but there are a lot of things that we do as a family, and there are things that I will talk about in other videos that my kids are doing individually, but we do love to do things as a family. Now, last year, I think I said we were going to do, I don't even know what I said we were going to do for science last year. But whatever it was, we didn't do it because I ended up writing a whole trees, seeds, and leaves botany curriculum that we ended up doing instead. There were a few things that we didn't do because I think by the time I put this out, it was, I don't know, October, November. So there were some things that were going to kind of like tie in at the beginning of this year, having to do with leaves and seeds and, you know, things that we kind of talked about naturally over the summer too. But especially for my younger kids, we're definitely going to dive into this a little bit more at this beginning of the school year with fall and leaves changing and all of that. And this one is designed in a similar way to my morning time guide, where we'll have a book that we read together or family read alouds. We will have like middle and high school books and activities and deeper learning, and then elementary books, activities, learning that's more specific to them. So every topic has lists just for that. There's activities for high school, very specific book lists, final project, all these different things. So we're going to kind of do the things that we didn't do last year for this. And then my older kids are going to be doing some chemistry. So some of that, because I have 3 high schoolers, we're going to be doing some of that together as a family, maybe some of the reading, things like that, or I'll just kind of like lump them together. I'll talk about this a little more when I do the chemistry or when I do the more like individual subjects and I do a high school video. I'll talk a little bit about this more, but I'll probably bring in some of the chemistry into our family learning time along with that. And we'll probably be doing also some human body things, just because I think some of my kids need a little refresher on things like reproduction and, you know, puberty and things that happen. Because some of the things we talked about with my older kids, now my younger kids are getting old enough that we need to have those conversations again. And I think these are just good conversations to have as family. So I don't have a specific curriculum. I do have a lot of books on like human body and reproduction and sex and all these things that we will be bringing into the conversation. And just kind of like throwing them in. And then probably my 2 younger kids will do a little bit more like human body things that, I don't know. Like I said, I don't really have like a specific plan or a specific curriculum. Just going to be kind of like putting together a literature-based unit study with all the books that we have already about human body. So those are the things that we are going to be doing together as a family for our 25-26 homeschool year. Like I said, I'll be putting together a few more specific videos with specifically high school Probably I'll get to the 3rd and 7th grader too. But like I said, a lot of the things we're going to be doing we're doing them together. So we'll probably also bring in some different read aloud books. I will probably choose some read aloud books that are specifically from our Stories of Home guide when we're doing that. There are some more like fiction stories that I'll probably bring into that. And then kind of as we go into the year, we'll just see what happens, see what books I find that my kids are interested in, or, you know, the latest book that comes out that I'm excited about reading with them. We'll just see what happens, because that's kind of how we like to do things. But as we're going into this year, I'm really excited about the things that we're going to learn together as a family, and that's my favorite part of our homeschool. I will link all the resources that I can below, but make sure I do have a blog post that has all of these resources in it, and make sure you check that out, because that's where you're going to find all the links to all the things. And you can find my grade level specific resources there if I haven't done the video yet. When you watch this and you want to look ahead and see what we're going to do, you can go ahead and check out that blog post and you can see those there. All right, hope that you are having a wonderful start to your homeschool year, and I will talk to you soon, friends. And in the meantime, keep cultivating your home. Bye.